What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up Podcast. We are still here doing E3 2016. It's getting later and later in the day, and so it is time for us to do Ubisoft. The three of us are still together. It's myself, Cameron McCulloch-Cable, Lewis Crawford.
Hello.
And Lawrence Titley.
Hello.
Now, boys, what did you think of Ubisoft at E3 2016?
Well,
A resounding...
it was a resounding
positive. Yeah, I feel like that's something that can be said of E3 2016 in general.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. I mean,
Come on,
there wasn't
Sony.
anything really. The thing is, though, I feel like I talked about it, and I think maybe this was true last year to a degree, but not to this level. And then
Really?
Sony came. Yeah, well, the thing is, if you think about the other shows last year, when Sony came along, the others were good. But I still think we all agreed last year wasn't.
Oh, I don't know. I
Amazing.
think last year was pretty fucking... I mean, like, backwards compatibility, Mirror's
Yeah,
Edge,
that's
Star
true.
Wars
That's
Battlefront...
something we were major
and
into.
Sony were still
Wildlands,
capable
but
of knocking out the
Sony-
pack, even with the whatever. There was a lot certainly going on
I
on
don't
both
know,
sides of the camp.
I'd say 2015 was one of the best E3s of a very long time.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can discuss that another time.
Yeah.
Because right now we're going to work, as we do, chronologically through Ubisoft's E3 press conference, going from the very first announcement to the very last announcement. Questionable that these are announcements. Actually, I guess there's more announcements here than any of the others. Also, if I sneeze, I'm incredibly sorry. So, Lawrence, because I might sneeze, you're going to guide us through this fine list of things.
Oh, so I have my lovely annotations.
Your lovely annotations. Well then, take it away.
The whole thing kicked off with a lovely performance of Freddie Mercury.
It did.
Mm.
It kicked off with Queen. It was Don't Stop Me Now,
Yeah.
wasn't
This
it?
was Don't Tell Me Now.
And there was a
Yes,
great deal of costume buffoonery.
there was a giraffe, I seem to remember.
Yes, there was.
There was a
And some
giraffe.
ruddy
there was
high
a,
heels.
There was a panda. There was a horse.
I'm not sure.
Was there a horse?
There may have been a horse.
I think you could probably
Some
describe
kind
a
of
couple of the
equid.
people on stage as
Mm.
horsey. There were people dressed up in theatre garb, and they kind of stealth announced Just Dance 2016
Mm.
17.
or 2017.
Yeah.
That naming convention's weird. All platforms. Interestingly, they announced it for NX,
Yeah,
which
which is.
we believe is the first third-party NX game that's been announced. I can't think of anything else. We know there's Zelda.
Mm.
Oh no, there's a Monster Hunter that's been
Really?
announced for it, I think. So that's 3 to this game's incredible opening lineup
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing to notice because I think, like, it's not the first we've well, obviously it's not the first we've heard of the NX, but it's the first I think we've heard of it being taken seriously as that way.
Yeah.
If you can think of Just Dance being on it as being taken seriously.
Well, I mean, it clearly sells big for them every year. What I think's really interesting
Yeah, that's
about
true.
this is last year or the year before, maybe the way they did Just Dance was it was a mobile game.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
They did Just Dance on like all mobile platforms.
It made
You
it seem
picked
like there
up
wouldn't
and,
need to be another
like,
Just
it
Dance.
wouldn't ever come back onto consoles properly again. And it seems like maybe that didn't work for them in the way they wanted it to.
So does treating the next like as one would mobile gaming constitute taking it seriously?
I mean, we joke, but it's literally more announcements than we've had from Nintendo at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It probably sells gangbusters.
You've got to imagine if it didn't, they'd have stopped it by now. It seems to be a pretty core tenet of their seasonal approach.
I think.
So we had that, then Aisha Tyler took the stage because she's basically the Ubisoft host at this point.
Yeah.
It's her 5th year.
5th year. That's pretty
Yeah,
impressive. I can't think of anyone else who's done 5 years that doesn't own the company.
Yeah.
Indeed, that's true.
And she felt a lot more natural, I'd say, this year.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Still a bit disjointed, but she's an adult stand-up comedian doing 2 hours of video game announcements, so that's to be expected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Always good, I would say. What was
Yes.
the next happening, my friend?
The next happening was Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yes.
Was it announced? Was it? Yes.
It was announced last year.
It was announced last year, but they did some extra fleshing out.
This was the big gameplay reveal, I think.
Yeah.
We didn't see gameplay last year,
No.
as far as I remember. And this year we got gameplay. We got a fair chunk of gameplay. We got vehicle gameplay, combat gameplay, co-op gameplay. We got lots of scripted
lots
dialogue.
Yes.
Okay, 420 game, 420 gamer tag. I'm just taking Tango over on Charlie 2424. Coming in on a helicopter, which always goes down well.
Yeah, I always find it funny when they do these sections of here's how you're going to be playing the games with your friends.
Yeah.
And as someone who's played computer games for a long time, and I think computer games is the industry where it's been the easiest to connect to people, I don't think we play like that.
No.
For one, I swear a hell of a lot more.
I think there's going to be some...
you only played Dwarf Fortress, so geez.
Well...
someone's going to be broadcasting some music.
Yeah, there's going to be far
There's
less
gonna be
organisation.
Half of your team's going to be Russian, and you're going to have no understanding of what's going on.
I mean, I really like to get a proper squad together and play some of these games like that. Like,
Yeah.
I've been playing a huge amount of Overwatch, and I've yet to have a proper party game, like, with like a group of 6 people. But I would love for us to somehow play Overwatch together and have that back and forth.
Yeah.
Because I experienced it with the GTA heists.
Oh, yeah?
And when you got a team together who were dead serious about doing it properly, looking out for each other, it was fucking awesome. But it still didn't sound like that. Like, even when it was at its most taking it seriously, far too seriously, frankly, like, even then it was still confusion, there was lag, there was, oh, wait, hold on, I've got to go answer the door. Oh, no, the cat's shat on something. And then you pick it back up, and, hold on, I've got to go turn my stereo off. Like, even, like, the real world never sounds like that, and it's so scripted that it feels... I mean, we couldn't tell it apart from whether it was actual in-game dialogue.
Yeah, well, to some degree, I got the impression that it might not have actually been that the voiceover afterwards, that the voiceover that was given to sort of the coordinated team interaction wasn't was a voiceover rather than chatter that was going on at the same time as the game. It did get the impression that you could look at this whole thing as being a lot less organised than the chatter makes it appear to be.
Right, I see what you mean.
So,
interestingly, I don't think anybody took the stage to play anything this year.
No.
Yeah.
I think the people who were on the stage were purely talking about the game, which in past years, Ubisoft have had people on stage playing, and they've been the ones rattling that chatter back and forth. So it's always seemed, they've always tried to make it look live.
Yeah.
Whereas this year, they seem to kind of drop that pretense altogether and just go, "This is the ideal, and you'll never play it like this, but this is what we picture it." Which I guess is kind of the point of E3. Like, the point of these, the point of this whole, cycle of conferences is to show you, like, the idealized version of what these games look like, play like, experience like, and that's maybe dumb considering they're asking you to pre-order stuff, but it's exciting in some way, I would say. What happened next?
Next was the Fractured But Whole.
The Fractured But Whole.
The lovely little...
Be careful there.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're going to have to be super careful with some of the language we use here, because I'm not comfortable saying some of the things they did. South Park is a really interesting property.
It's impressive that it survived this long.
Well, I think it's more impressive that it's almost garnered a reputation for being incredibly offensive.
Yes.
And it now feels like it's getting to a point where it's playing that, where it knows it's so offensive that it's being more offensive. And, like, that's fine, because that's what comedy is, and comedy's subjective, and one way or another.
But don't just make a game on that.
Well, not just that, but, like, man, Matt Stone and Trey Parker must have balls of fucking adamantium. Like, I don't know how that has skipped past the... I mean, this is an awful way to say it, but I don't know how that has skipped past the PC, Tumblr, everything generation...
Well,
but it somehow has seemed to do it.
I mean, their most recent season of South Park's basically dedicated to that.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
To be honest, though, like, I think they've already attacked Scientology. I don't think there's anything that could actually possibly be worse than that. I think the hordes of the internet are nothing compared to what Scientology could do to them.
Not based on the 10 minutes I had with them on the street in Birmingham. Anyway, so the Fractured Butthole, we saw gameplay. We saw game. We saw
Yeah,
gameplay.
we did.
No, we did
But
see
the thing
gameplay.
is, because of the art style, it looked like a cutscene,
Yes.
which is really cool. Like, they've done a really good job of like getting that art style.
I mean,
And they talked about that with Stick of Truth.
I think I'll definitely be playing it. The Stick of Truth was very good.
Yeah,
very
I've heard
funny.
As I understand it, this one's going to be a bit less stand at two ends of a corridor and run up and kick each other in the nads.
Oh yeah.
Style of RPG, and this
Yeah.
is going to be more.
It looked a bit more fluid and far less turn-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, possibly turn-based, but without the run up, standing at opposite ends of
Yeah.
a corridor.
Yeah,
Element.
yeah. And I guess that works with a shift away from the fantasy setting and the
Mhm.
shift more towards like sci-fi superhero kind of
Superheroes.
not modern gaming, but
Yeah.
modern gaming, if that makes sense.
It is crazy levels of referential, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of meta humor.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
I wonder how many times they've tried to be sued. So we had a Fractured Butthole.
And then the next thing was The Division, or rather,
The Great Divide.
such as it was. And I'm not entirely sure what they were announcing here.
So they announced the DLC. They announced a number of the expansion packs.
Mhm.
It was the same stuff we saw on the Xbox stage, and I think one more. There's nothing all that interesting. They did a lot of player boasting, like a lot of we have this many millions of you, which is interesting because what did they say? How many was it?
So
10
yeah, they said 10 million.
10 million.
Mhm.
But you have to wonder whether that's based on people who bought it or whether that means people who are playing it.
Yeah,
now.
they
Yes.
said
Because we know that there was a massive drop-off rate.
they phrased it as though it was 10 million. I'm not extracting. This is how I took it. They phrased it to me as though it was 10 million recurring players, which,
Mhm.
considering the player
Potentially.
base dropped off like 95 or 3 or 4 or something %, would make you think that that game has sold literally 90 million copies.
Which seems highly unlikely.
Yeah, so there's definitely statistic fuckery going on there.
Yeah.
Mm.
You just have to wonder where the statistic fuckery is.
Well, I think there's been a lot of that kind of. We'll pretend like there's not been any problems with anything.
Yeah.
There's been a
Yeah.
lot of like. I mean, we'll get onto it, but there was. Yeah, we'll get onto it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
be pretending that there hasn't
There's-
been any
there was-
kind
there
of.
was- There a few places where we're like.
there's a pretty big moment of fuckery coming up very soon. So what followed The Division?
And what followed The Division was Eagle Flight.
Eagle Flight.
Yes,
Ubisoft's premiere VR experience, as was made clear over the last few years. So Eagle Flight was announced last E3 with a massive, basically photorealistic looking CG trailer.
Yeah.
And the way it was announced and shown in that trailer was you play as a thing that flies through various gaps and holes and cities and bridges and
It's all
whatever.
very flying
it's all set
simulator.
it's set in a post-apocalyptic Paris,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked pretty cool. It looked very Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Then
that's
they
what we thought
showed
it
off
was.
gameplay this year, and it's perhaps the single biggest downgrade I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And oh my god!
This makes the Watch Dogs downgrade look.
So Lewis has just pulled the trailer up next to us. I can't believe how different. It's like if somebody showed you. It's unbelievable. It's like the difference between Assassin's Creed
Yeah.
Unity and Goddess.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And Assassin's Creed Unity is the trailer we're watching right now, and Goddess is what they showed this year.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable the difference.
Yeah.
And it oh my god, it's fucking sickening to look at.
Yeah.
I wonder whether this is a statement about a massive limitation of VR. That
Yeah,
VR will
that's
work
something.
for something this dynamic and cool and interesting to play, but it's
Yeah.
gonna look like trash.
This is that
Mhm.
thing we were talking before about Fallout being VR,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the problem. Is that so far everything we've seen for VR is games where you're standing still, or games like this where the expectations actually much the actual
A lot
outcome's much
lower
lower.
than-
Yeah,
Not what
yeah.
you expect.
So like in our current, understanding of VR, like there's no way that Fallout's a thing that can be done.
If you want to keep it to the standard of Fallout.
In our current form. We don't know whether, maybe Morpheus or something.
Yeah, that's the question, is they
Scorpio.
made a very specific point about Fallout being in 2017, and I wonder whether that was because they knew Project Scorpio and the 4.5 will be out in 2017, and that's what they're aiming for.
Yeah.
Because Eagle Flight is playable on the show floor.
Mm.
So I wonder if maybe next year they come out and go, only joking, here's what Eagle Flight really looks like.
Yeah.
And maybe they have to, because I get the feeling this is going to be a big hill that they will fall on.
Well, they've really shot themselves on the talon if they intend
reference
to
there.
if they intend to do that, because all they've done is engendered themselves a whole load of bad will that they won't necessarily have washed away next year, because not everyone's going to be paying attention next year.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. They really have. They've got to start learning.
Mm-hmm.
They really have. Because if it comes out that any of the games that we saw this year get downgraded by the time they come out, and I'm dead sure it will.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm dead sure Watch Dogs will be downgraded, and what's it called? Ghost Recon will be downgraded, maybe even For Honor as well. If they're just going to keep generating this reputation for not being trustable, and they've not fallen on that sword yet. Like, the thing you've got to give every other conference, even EA, like EA's conference this year was shit, but it's them saying we're listening and we're trying to do better. Microsoft with Xbox One, we're listening and we're trying to do better. Sony, when the PSN came down, famously did the 60-minute silence at E3, and Ubisoft haven't yet.
Yeah.
They haven't said, like, they tried last year with people playing stuff, but even then, people worked out.
Yeah.
Like, people called them out on it, and they really do need to come out and say, because it's going to be much more entertaining and enjoyable if we know that what we're watching is what we'll play. Like, if you can take away that disbelief suspension, if you can really buy into it, I'm going to enjoy the things that I see. There's so much more. So what was the next announcement?
The next one was Star Trek Bridge Crew, another VR.
This
release.
is really interesting.
Interesting, certainly. I mean, it was what Lewis was talking about previously. Is for all the VR games, you're either standing in one place, or it's low
because
quality.
that game, it looked,
and this may well be both.
No, I agree. Because it looked okay, and then you saw the actual visuals, and you're like, almost motionless, and you're basically a character touching a screen.
Yes, I couldn't in actual
from what
mechanics.
we kind of saw,
distinguish it from that current VR game where you're a chef. I mean, it's putting things in places. You may be on the bridge of it.
Yeah, because this looked. Yeah, but this looked like your basic interaction was with a 2D screen.
Yeah,
but you can look around as well.
Yeah.
And then when they showed the actual visuals of looking out into space, the quality drop was quite major.
So there's two interesting things I think that we can take from this. The first is who owns the Star Trek licenses.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And the second is that I don't think people know how to demo VR at E3 yet. Because Ubisoft have some really interesting VR projects. There's a thing called The Wolf Within or something like that. Where you play VR, you all put on Oculus, you play a multiplayer VR, you sit in the same room as people, and what you see in front of you is a campfire. One of you is a werewolf, and you have to work it out. But the way that you play the game is if we're all sitting in a circle, if I lean in to talk to you, Lawrence, our characters lean in together and we talk to each other, but nobody else can hear it. So you watch these secret conversations happening. And from that and the way that the characters interact together and the way you stand up and move and talk, you have to work out who's the werewolf and murder them.
Oh.
That's fucking genius.
It's like it's like Mafia, but with VR.
Yeah, or like something like Wink Murder.
Yeah.
That's really clever, and that's a total reinvention of gameplay, because that's something that you definitely couldn't do outside of VR. And I think it's going to be a limitation of the next few years of people bringing traditional gameplay to E3 and going, and look how much better this looks in VR. When the stuff I want to see in VR is the stuff that I can't sit down with a controller and do.
New gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. It's the stuff like, Job Simulator to an extent. Like, I'm trying to think of the big. There's a big VR game that is the Portal demo or Paint the Paint game in Vive.
Yeah,
the kind of stuff that you can't do in traditional gameplay, because if VR is going to change this industry in the way everybody wants it to, it's going to have to change it quickly, or it's going to
Yeah.
have to change it soon,
Mhm.
because in the next few years we're going to have new hardware that can do new things, just like the Xbox One and PS4
think
did a few years ago.
The thing is that we're having is that I think it's going to be a long time before VR takes off, personally. Because I
Mhm.
think the problem is that VR is built on this hype that we can do amazing things now.
Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
really what we are looking at is we're looking at like the PS2 at VR. you
Okay,
know.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to be a while before we're looking at the PS4 VR, to use
Mhm.
that same
Mhm.
analogy.
Yeah.
You know, like we are very much in the early days.
Mhm.
And it's trouble because the industry is built on the idea that we are one step away from Fallout 4 VR, or if that's
Yeah, the
you know,
hype cycle is
Yeah.
dangerous to that kind of innovation.
yeah. And there's been a few of them. Like Job Simulator is actually probably a good example of a VR game that seems to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's a VR game that kind of its art style allows it to still look quite nice.
Yeah,
But then when you try to
Mhm.
make something that's meant to be kind of photorealistic-y, or anything that's kind of not intentionally styled that way,
Mhm.
it's very telling. And it's very showing, like in the Star Trek VR game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can tell immediately that you're like, well, this is pulling me out, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. I mean,
Mhm.
every year at EGX for the past few years that we've attended, and hopefully traditionally every year that we attend since, we play indie games. We dedicate at least a
Mm.
day to indie games.
mhm.
And I've played a whole bunch of Oculus stuff.
Yeah.
You played Monstrum, I played kart racing. We've done all sorts of things that use VR in interesting ways, and I think it's maybe going to be those companies that squeeze the blood out of the stone of Oculus,
Yeah.
out of Vive, out of PlayStation VR, and maybe AR or whatever Microsoft has lined up if they have anything, that will push VR forward.
Yeah.
Simply because Ubisoft has investors to please.
Yeah. Of
EA
course.
has
Mhm.
investors to please. They have, and maybe PlayStation is actually where this could really change, because PlayStation has to sell this as basically its own console,
Yeah.
whereas
Mhm.
Ubisoft has to sell games,
Yeah, of course.
and the
Yeah.
investors aren't going to pay. Like, that's maybe why we didn't see something like The Wolf Within on the stage,
Yeah.
because that's harder to sell,
Mhm.
which is a shame. What was the next thing?
The next one was For Honor.
For
For
Honor.
Samurais versus Vikings versus I
Versus
believe a kind of
medieval versus something
early
else, and then
modern
potentially
period?
a DLC character. Yeah.
yeah.
So last year they revealed this, and they showed it as kind of we kind of thought it might have been like an arena combat game.
Yeah, like a sort of hero combat mode
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Team Fortressy kind of
Yeah,
thing,
like a
but you've
melee
got
Team Fortress.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's what they showed last year. This year they've gone for showing the single player campaign.
Which, to be fair, they talked about last year, and last year we all said, I don't believe them. And actually, now that they've shown us this year, I do think that was on the cards from the beginning. We were
Yeah.
just a bit sort of not able to see it.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. I think it was interesting. I mean, whether it will just fade into the background, I'm not sure, because
Mhm.
it didn't strike me as something so amazing that I would buy it for that.
Yeah.
It felt like Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it was
did
Dynasty Warriors.
resemble Dynasty
then-
Warriors quite strongly.
Worse, it felt like a simplified Dynasty Warriors to me. Which is saying something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't look particularly. I mean, the trailer that they gave us was built on this like evil entity. We're kind of all battling each other, but I get the feeling that there's going to be some point where we're united in some way against this
Yeah.
ultimate evil that's separating us. But just kind of impression I've got.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I
from that.
agree.
But like, it just didn't seem too interesting to me. Which is the
Mm.
kind of the combat seemed to be based on like a 3-direction dodge system or something.
Yeah, it felt very janky.
Yeah, it didn't.
I mean, you were floating the idea that it's possible. Yeah, that was.
It used to
there
be
was there was a VR
Yeah,
element.
Connect.
I suggested that
Kinect.
the way that the
Yeah.
game was
Kinect
designed originally was that it was a Kinect game. I don't know if you've seen Rise, the game that launched Kinect 2.0 when the Xbox One came out. And it's the kind of game where it takes 5 seconds for you to swing forward with your arms, so the
Yeah.
character does it. And this felt very similar to that in that the combat felt sort of slow and methodical, not
Mhm.
because it was slow and methodical, but it looked like it was giving you time to
Yeah.
do something. And I
Right.
wonder whether at some point this was a Kinect game, where you had the
They're
time
reversing
to
all of this.
do something, and then Kinect went out the window. PlayStation doesn't do anything with the camera anymore, and they said, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
we need the controller to do this."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I noticed you've got the PlayStation camera. That's really interesting because they're very rare, as far as I understand it. So I wonder whether at some point this has gone through a major revision, and that's why what we saw last year and what we saw this year looks so very different.
Yeah.
Because over the course of it changing from a Kinect game to what it was last year to this year, the revisions it's gone through have brought us to a For Honor now that makes a lot of sense, but controls a little jankily perhaps, whereas it may have started life as something very different, and I'd put good money on that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
No, I mean, not a lot was entirely apparent as to the actual
The way it
nature
controls.
of the combat
Yeah.
last year. So
I worry. I kind of worry about it if that truly is how it works from what they showed us, because it did seem very
it
simplified.
felt
Which
ugly.
It did.
you know, like I don't like. It kind of works with Kinect, but from what they showed us, it looked like the entire game is based on these kind of, or not the entire game, but the entire combat is based on these three directions.
Maybe it tried to go for like Dark Souls slow dance, but without any of the elegance.
Yeah.
Like a step-by-step ballet.
The thing is, as well, actually, I don't know whether it's fair to say that's based on what we saw, but it seemed like it was very much in a Dynasty Warriors sense, where you've got enemies that basically are nothing, and then you've got like the one
Big
good
bad.
enemy every so often.
Yeah, like you've got single kills and bullet sponges all
Yeah.
mixed in together. Yeah. I got that feeling.
Yeah.
I will say though, I think what we saw of For Honor this year looks much more playable and much more approachable than last year.
Yeah, like
I certainly want to go out and try a demo of it, which I can't say I did last year.
yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think it looked interesting. I mean, it's something that I think would play, but it's whether the controls are really as simple as we think they are at this point.
Also be very interested in how that controls on PC.
Yeah, of
As
course.
a lot of
yeah,
it was
definitely.
controller interface that we saw.
Yeah.
A closing note on For Honor though, the gentleman who presents it is fucking awesome.
Huh?
Cane
Quite.
Man.
He came in a cane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lawrence doesn't like him.
He smells like a salesman. I don't trust that kind.
It's incredible. Lewis has smell-o-vision on his TV.
Yep.
We don't tell anybody about that.
Don't tell anyone about my.
Well, we're not getting a press copy of For Honor.
Anyway,
What happened next?
next up, you know what, Cameron? I
What?
think you should grow up.
I think I should grow up too.
Yeah.
Thank God then.
Thank God, then there's a
Ubisoft
game
announced
specifically for
a
you.
sequel to Grow Home?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of interesting.
It's got a cute robot.
It does. Grow Home
He's
was
red.
Grow Home was sort of Ubisoft published indie darling
Yeah.
Mhm.
from last year, was it?
Yeah, I believe it's last year.
His head
Fucking
is
hell.
moderately big.
It
It
was
is moderately big.
yeah, it was
Ironically, growing up,
it was very well received, I say.
His performance. Yeah,
Very
it was very well received. Critically, it did very well. I
Don't know in
can't
terms of sales.
remember much about it though. There wasn't like
They were big on saying it was its own kind of a new form of gameplay, but it seemed to me to be a kind of 3D platformer,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so the first game, as far as I'm aware, it's about kind of like it's a 3D platformer where you can kind of manipulate and move things around, and your kind of objective is to go up.
Yep.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
Using plants.
Yeah,
Get
well,
higher.
in this one they announced using plants. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think that was the case.
I don't think that was in the other one.
So then
The grow is completely coincidental.
So from Grow Up, we went to Trials. Trials of the Blood Dragon.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Unless I've made a mistake and you have
No,
something
you
else.
are right.
I'm right.
No,
okay.
no, you are right.
So we went from there to Trials of the Blood Dragon, which is interesting. Seems like Blood Dragon is maybe being pitched as its own thing, which I really
Yeah.
like the idea of. I'd love to see an Assassin's Creed Blood Dragon. I'd love to see a Splinter Cell Blood Dragon, Rainbow Six Blood Dragon.
Yeah.
Stuff that just totally futzes with licenses and just lets them be a bit fun. I really like
Yeah, I
the
kinda
idea
like
of the
that.
90s influence on this one, although I think it's kind of wasted on Trials.
Yeah.
It feels like they can't, like, I get that Trials is a really good place to do experimentation, but it feels like a 2D point-to-point racing game isn't maybe the best place to do meta humor reference.
Yeah, that's
referential. Like I don't know. Maybe it's not the right fit for it. But then here I sit saying I'd love them to do all the licenses with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe fuck. Wouldn't it be great if E3 2017 for Ubisoft was just Blood Dragon year, and they were like, okay, you like Assassin's Creed? How do you like Assassin's Creed with robots and laser eyes and fucking Jurassic Park dinosaurs in Egypt?
Yeah, like
With 60s music. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool, I think.
yeah, they could push it as a proper game as well. It's a hacked Animus.
Oh, because all the
Push
hacking
it as a
happens.
proper game.
Hacking. It's Watch Dogs 3, Assassin's
Did
Creed
Watch
Blood
Dogs
Dragon.
come next?
Hmm?
Because if so, that would be a really great segue.
No, I'm afraid it
God.
didn't. Assassin's Creed did, though.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, there was
on
like-
that thing about video games,
There's 20 minutes of a movie.
there's 20 minutes of a movie.
Yeah, this was super weird. So they said, and now it's time for Assassin's Creed. And we were like, oh, what, really? Like in the year that you're not bringing one out, you're going to announce it? And they were like, the movie.
Yeah.
Okay. So they brought the guy out who's the producer of the movie, who is a famous movie producer. He's had his fingers in many pies. Not all of them great, I must add. And he came out and talked about how Assassin's Creed seems like a really good fit for a movie, a really natural fit for a movie, how they've got a great director and a great cast. I found it really interesting that he didn't talk at all about why it's a good fit for a movie. Like, they talked about how it's a great story, but to me there's a lot of information been trickled out about this movie that people haven't picked up on. Like, they've claimed the movie is like comparable to The Matrix in the way it does things. And to me that makes instant sense, because the Animus and The Matrix are very similar MacGuffins, and I could really see that being an interesting fit for a movie. But it seems like that's a very, like, if that is a fair comparison, that's something that you should really drive home, because The Matrix was seminal for its time. And if Assassin's Creed works, it could be the same. But it seems like instead they're really trying to push the "this was a video game once" bit of it, which isn't a smart idea. Because in the last 4 weeks we've had Angry Birds and Warcraft. Spoilers, they're both shit.
Oh, I disagree.
Well, you've seen
Warcraft.
I haven't seen Warcraft, which is fair.
Warcraft is well received.
Well,
I don't think
I'll
that's fair.
hold back judgment on that. But Angry Birds is a pile of shit. Like, it's utter hot street
I'm not
trash.
hearing anything against
maybe,
Warcraft.
maybe. Well,
Aren't you?
No, it's
Do
very
read
good.
the reviews.
It's very good.
Okay, I mean, like, I haven't seen it, but the critic reviews across the board are not great for it.
Really, I've heard
Yeah.
very good things from the ones
Empire
my
was
sources.
like 2 stars. Total Film was 2 stars.
It would be really concerning if they thought that this is going to be sold on the Assassin's Creed loyalty card. If it is,
What loyalty?
that's a really, really big kind of red flag.
Yeah.
It was interesting as well that they kind of talked about the motive of Abstergo. This is something I noticed as like a fan. They said Abstergo's motive for this was to improve mankind.
Yeah, like
Which
sort of
is-
force evolution.
Which is not quite their goal in the games.
Yeah.
Maybe they're changing canon.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. I don't like changing canon.
Like
Please no.
the artillery replacement squad.
So the question is, how does this affect the next game in the franchise? Like, the question is, does the
Well,
Assassin's
it
Creed...
puts them further away.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to reboot it.
See, I think so too. And if the rumours are to be believed, do you remember years ago when that Prince of Persia game leaked, and it was the guy stood in Egypt, and it looked all very sort of realistic but very minimal? The rumours are that that's been turned into the new Assassin's Creed game. That it's all sort of Mayan Egyptian times. That's a mix-up of history periods there, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
It's all Egyptian times. It's all very centered around like the gods of the Egyptian times and the civilizations of the Egyptian times, which is a fucking fascinating idea. If it's not a reboot, because if it's a reboot, that's the literally cleanest slate they could have possibly wiped.
Yeah, true.
Which I think is really damaging, because all the stuff, fucking Assassin's Creed annoys me so much because there is so much good in it. The future storylines are so interesting and so clever.
Well, let's say were.
No, they are. Like, even the new crap ones where Abstergo is just a media company. It's a really smart idea if they play it right. They just don't know how to write it. And it really worries me that the Ubisoft, the biggest game developer in the world, are so bad at fixing that problem that they might just be rebooting all of this.
Yeah.
I would love them. They're never going to do this. There's no hope in the world. This is like Star Wars level dreaming. But I would love them to just say, okay, we fucked up. Here is Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and 3 again.
Yeah.
Here is all the stuff you should have, like,
I
here's
think.
Altair 1,
Yeah.
Ezio 2, Desmond 3. Here's the story it should have
Connor?
been. Now, fuck off. Now the slate is wiped clean and we can just futz about in history. But they've done so little to do that.
I think.
They probably need to wait
I
20
wonder-
years, frankly.
No.
Give it to me now!
You'd need to wait to do
I
Star Trek Kirk again.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. I guess maybe a reboot wouldn't be the worst thing, to be honest, if it allowed them to kind of go back into the more traditional
Sure.
Assassins.
Maybe.
Because I mean, like, if the thing is that the way they're pushing the movie is as if they're going, like, the movie seems to be very Assassin's Creed 1 mixed with 2, I guess, where you've got, like, the Animus is this important component of the thing, Abstergo is an important component of the thing, whereas in the more recent games, that's, like, kind of disappeared and it no longer matters. So I'm wondering if that's... They're trying to I think they're trying to capitalize on the old audience, but that's probably not saying much considering that's, I would imagine, the larger audience.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, that
Um,
makes sense. It is a shame that Abstergo went from a really interesting story thread to basically a framing device.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I do hope they do something more proper and official with that.
Yeah.
So, considering that there's no Assassin's Creed game out this year, we've spent a long time talking about Assassin's Creed. So then
Let's go on to the other Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. Tell me of it, sir.
Watch Dogs 2.
The dogs which do
Which dog?
watch.
The dogs, hark, hark, the dogs do watch.
So, cry havoc and let's sip the Watch Dogs of War.
Indeed.
So, Aidan Pierce in Watch Dogs 1 was a very sad,
Yeah.
crap, tragic figure. He was,
Yeah.
I don't want this.
Yeah.
I never asked for any of this. And it turns out that people
Nerdy
saw
Batman.
Watchmen and now they want something fun. So Watch Dogs 2 is... Watch Dogs 2 is bright, colourful, San Francisco, Sunset
Yeah.
Overdrive, hip-hop. It's...
Well, I wouldn't say it
I
was... I wouldn't say it's Sunset Overdrive per se.
Well,
but I would say it has some of the vital energy of Sunset
yeah,
Overdrive.
I think it's got that kind of punky, modern, fuck you
yeah, well, the thing is, I
attitude
think
to it.
what we saw here wasn't... It was kind of... Like, the gameplay we saw was kind of slightly different to the impression we got from the original trailer they showed for it.
Yes,
Because
yeah.
the original trailer was very, very, like... This is, like, literally Sunset Overdrive 2
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
style, like, punk, going on. Whereas this was a bit different.
That last trailer they showed where it was the guy kind of...
yeah, it kind of came back to it, didn't it?
Yeah, where they were like moving past various things. He was jumping over something in the center of the frame, and then it was he'd jump
Yeah.
over the next thing into the next frame, and there was like heavy rap and R&B playing in the background. It had a very... You know what this feels like? This feels very GTA.
Yeah.
And it feels that in a way that Watch Dogs, the original Watch Dogs release did. So
Mm.
the original Watch Dogs announcement thing, when that came out,
Yeah.
and it felt very living city, everything was hackable, everything was touchable, Aiden was an actual character, it had this real atmosphere to it. And I think the more we saw of it, it was a death by 1,000 cuts situation,
Yeah.
where that atmosphere slowly dried up and died out, and Aiden dried up and died out till we had a game that was trying to be GTA but wasn't quite there. And I think maybe setting it in San Francisco, setting it in this Silicon Valley, lots of young new city with a young new premise of like a social media campaign
Mm.
and this punky attitude, this West Coast hip hop, sun cresting over the hills. It feels younger and it feels like it knows itself more, but we all know not to trust Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is the interesting thing. I
One's
think
burnt.
imagine Watch Dogs 1 didn't happen. I assume that I would be very excited for this.
See, I really am excited for this, and by the time we got to the end of Watch Dogs' hype cycle, I couldn't have given a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, we literally got Watch Dogs for free. Like, we were given a copy of Watch
Mm.
Dogs, never fucking touched it. And I do really want to touch Watch Dogs 2,
Mm.
but I'm not going to go near it at launch, because somebody's going to go near it at launch, and it worries me that the first thing you'll hear about it is downgrade, not as fun as you
Yeah.
thought it was.
Mm.
And I don't know, maybe that's the like stupid old man cynic in me, that I should be able to suspend my disbelief of a game more. But
yeah.
They did so much burning with Watch Dogs 1. They're going to have to do a lot of rebuilding for Watch Dogs 2. And if they do it, it's a real success.
Yeah.
But if they don't, what are they going to do with that IP?
See, it depends, because, like, for me, I was a big fan of Watch Dogs 1, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should play it. But
yeah.
I think it's interesting that it seems like they are not trying to attract that audience, because it seems like those that did like Watch Dogs 1 potentially might not as much like Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't really overemphasize the graphics with this one.
No,
That
but
being said,
I just mean that in like such a large change in mood, kind of, if you imagine a Batman game where you go from, let's say the next Batman game is more Adam Westy, you're not going to attract the same audience that you're into the brooding.
If it's got like the bow, piff, pow kind of things in it, it's not going to be called Arkham 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a totally fair thing. And yeah, that's a very fair comparison. Watch Dogs, it doesn't look like a sequel. It looks like a refresh.
Yeah,
and
which isn't a bad idea.
Maybe that's what Watch Dogs needs, but it was a big seller for them. It was one of their biggest IP launches.
Oh, this is where we were. This is so they said that Watch Dogs was very, very successful and well received.
Yes,
which was an interesting little.
example.
I remember at the time it being a really big IP launch for them. Like it was one of the big new IP launches for them. But it was, I don't know, maybe we sit too far on the side of the internet response of burn and stuff. But that is what I took away from Watch Dogs 1. And I think I would assume it's what the majority of the internet took away from Watch Dogs 1. So can they truly circumvent that? It will be a big question for them as this launches.
Also, just as an aside, big shout out for a more diverse protagonist roster.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't really have any more.
I think we're getting a lot more of that though now.
But I'd like to see more of that in video gaming.
I think we are.
Totally
I think it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've got. I feel like we've got 3 games so far that's got. Sorry.
No, you're right. We've had a fair few games that have had a lot of diversity. There's a lot more female protagonists.
Yeah.
Mass Effect seems to be leading with a femshep this time, which is really cooler than we've got Recon, Horizon Zero Dawn. We've got a lot more diversity both in colour and in gender. Good. And if you're one of the people who don't think this is a problem, check out some of the responses to the Watch Dogs 2 trailer. There's all sorts of shit online on message boards on Steam that proves that whether people believe this or not, whether people are doing it in parody or not, there's a lot of acid online and a lot of salt for this kind of shit. And I do think it's a problem that needs to be changed. So kudos to Watch Dogs and Ubisoft for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So then we moved on to...
We moved on to Steep.
Yeah. Steep. Steep to me was a really interesting thing. This was their one last thing moment. I was dead sure it was going to be Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
Dead sure
well,
of it.
It's very interesting. We skipped over something earlier that...
the 3 costumes in The Division.
Yeah, so they're releasing 3 costumes in Division. 4, if you give me a second.
If you sign up to... If you're on Ubisoft Club, which is like their...
It seemed to suggest that it's with Underground, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, that's super confusing.
Yes, there was Ghost Recon outfit, a Splinter Cell outfit, and a Siege outfit for your characters in Division Underground.
Okay.
And it's interesting that they pushed a Splinter Cell thing and then didn't come out and say, "Here's Splinter Cell."
Yeah.
Because that was like a hint of something being in the works. Like you wouldn't expect them to be like, "Here's an outfit for this game."
Yeah, I really thought that was a tease for something that was coming. Yeah, I was dead sure this was going to be Splinter Cell. Steve, to me, was a really interesting IP launch in that it started off a bit lame. It started off a bit... you don't think of Ubisoft and think of hardcore sports games. And so when they came out and said, here's our new IP, it's skiing. What?
They did say this is going to be a completely new form of game, a completely new form of genre.
Yeah.
And that was possibly
a bit
bold.
True.
Yeah.
It depends how much you want to define it. I think like you could define it in a way that says this is a new genre, but only if you're like games that are about skiing and snowboarding and
sharing trails and
Yeah.
It's basically snowboarding, but with base jumping as well.
yeah. But
Yeah.
the more they showed
It
of
looked
it,
good.
the more they showed of it, the more actually kind of cool and legitimate it became.
Mm.
The more that it went from a potted idea to an actual this is how you play it, this is what it is, this is the tangible minute to minute gameplay of this, the more it looked sort of actually really interesting. It seems to be based around stunting, collaborative stunting, and making trails that you then challenge other
Can
friends
share
with.
with
It's
other
a
people.
very social game.
Yeah.
Mm.
It reminds me a lot of SSX.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually,
Definitely.
it makes me think, where's SSX 2?
Yeah.
That's got to be on the way. But it reminds me a lot of SSX because, obviously, the latest SSX had ghosts. So you would ride a trail,
Oh yeah.
and that would form a ghost, which you and your friends could ride against and form challenges against. So you were always, like, snowboarding on a peak with someone. And SSX is a great game. It's a really, really good snowboarding game. And I think Ubisoft are going to have to prove that this can work,
Yeah, I agree.
because I think a lot of this hinges on social features and a lot of this hinges on line features, and that's a really cool gimmick if there's enough of a social community and club for it to be there. And we saw this same problem with was it the club, their
Yeah.
driving game, with the
Mm.
club, where you had these kind of baked in online features that maybe weren't quite as fleshed out as they needed to be for the game to be the success they wanted. So are they going to do
Yeah. I
a
get
slightly
that.
better online job with the minute to minute gameplay here?
I mean, like, the thing is with this is that it always has that problem of people having more. I think they think we have more friends than most people do. You know, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I think the only place where I've seen this kind of like make your own maps, do your own thing actually work is probably in GTA.
Yeah,
And that's the only place
yeah.
where it's really like kicked off and worked.
Mhm.
The make your own trails, do your own thing. It's kind of similar.
Yeah,
So it would be interesting if they can get it to work.
yeah. But I do think, but when those things do work,
Oh,
they
yeah.
work really
Yeah,
well.
they do.
GTA is a great example of that,
Yeah.
because with GTA Online, I played it for maybe a month and thought, okay, that's cool. And then I saw some of the stuff that people are doing online, and I keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And if they can support it as well as Rockstar have supported GTA Online, there could be something really legitimate in this. And if there is
Yeah.
something really legitimate in this, it's cool to see Ubisoft branching out into something they haven't done, and something that will be a new pillar for them, and maybe establishes them as a force to be reckoned with in a different place.
Yeah. While it saddened me a bit this show, a little bit, because for me, Ubisoft like so in the same way that Bethesda are like the premier RPG makers.
Yeah.
To me,
Mhm.
Ubisoft are like the premier, or at least they were the premier single player role play game. Not role play. They were
Action,
for me,
action adventure.
yeah.
Yeah.
kind of the ultimate in single player action adventure games.
Mhm.
They seem to be kind of going away from that a bit, kind of. I mean, we had Watch
Expand
Dogs.
their base,
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it
but not
kind
at
of
the
saddens me
expense of
that
what you do well.
Yeah.
because for me, like I would have loved a new IP that's something fresh, but also
in the professional skills that Ubisoft have honed.
Yeah.
And
I think like it's interesting to see them go away from it. I agree, but for me, like I just wanted something that's very single player, very
Yeah.
here's
yeah,
a
I
new
agree.
story, because they were so good at story.
Mhm.
I say were, which is something that saddens me. But you look at your kind
Far
of
Cry
Ubisoft,
3s.
your Far Cry 3,
Mhm.
your Assassin's Creed.
2.
Like you look at those games and you're like, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
want to see another
And they will. Those
game
games
like
are.
that.
Those games are going down as in history as maybe the golden age of Ubisoft. And I think it'll be the next 2 or 3 years where we see the next official Far Cry 5, where we see what Assassin's Creed is, where we eventually see
Yeah.
what Splinter Cell's become, that we'll see whether Ubisoft have jumped that shark.
Yeah,
And if they have, I think it will be this E3 that says
Okay.
that will be the turning point for.
Yeah.
For all we know, For Honor, by the time it comes out, will
Yeah.
have completely transformed again to whatever
Yeah.
Well,
we think it's going to be, and be exactly what you want it to be.
Or maybe that
Yeah.
single player is just far more,
but,
established than it seemed in that E3 demo.
yeah, I mean, you
Mm,
have to think
could be.
like from what we saw, it didn't really look like it was going to be too. Like it's one of those games where your story driven doesn't really seem very like a major element.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this game For Honor is going to be very heavy story. But I'm
Yeah.
not. The thing is, it's hard to imagine a heavy story in a game that's like, let's put ninjas and
And Vikings.
Vikings
Yeah,
and
I know what you mean.
knights together.
It takes a lot
Yeah.
of work to do a good story with that.
Yeah.
So that was their one last thing. And the thing that worries me about this is I really feel this year that companies have forgotten how to do the one last thing.
Yeah.
Because they did the one last thing and then they brought lots of people out to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Ubisoft. And every one of these conferences to me, every one of them, even Xbox, which had a pretty big final announcement, has fizzled out.
Yeah.
I remember, a year even, maybe, at the best 2 years ago, when that one last thing was like the ultimate. I mean,
Some
fuck,
of them
do you
have
remember
it.
the Last of Us demo?
Yeah.
Do you remember that when everything went dark?
Yeah.
There was no mention of this is the new thing. Just everything went dark and the clicker noises started
Yeah.
and it faded up and it was so good. It was such a closeout. They didn't say goodbye. They dropped the microphone and
Yeah.
walked off stage. And I know that seems pretentious, but that sense of bravado and that sense of showmanship is what we come to E3
Yeah.
for.
Definitely.
Like, it's that sense of fireworks and show, and I'm not getting that this year. I'm not getting that from the fizzling
Yeah.
out end of conferences. I want to leave a conference and think, fuck, that was the best thing ever!
Yeah.
So that, 15, 20 minutes later, when you look back on it, it comes with that golden glow, and none of these conferences
Yeah,
have that
I
golden
think
glow yet.
that's kind of my take of it so far, is that while we have got kind of good things being shown to us, there hasn't been too much. Like, there's been stuff I'm excited about, but not in the way that I'm like last year I had some things that were just like, this has changed my life. I am on the
my
moon right now.
Perhaps my favourite moment of anything games that we've done is when Sony announced Final Fantasy, and you could not sit still.
Oh yeah, like that's exactly what I mean. That to me, that is like the spirit of E3. Is
It
that
was
kind
joyous.
of that moment when we first saw Far Cry 3.
Yeah,
The moments,
yeah.
the moments. Dare I say, when we saw Watch Dogs.
No, yeah, you're totally right.
Like we haven't really had any massive big things. It's been, here's something you kind of already knew about.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something new, but it's not great. Maybe that's not fair, but
No, I think it's totally fair. Nothing has had that holy shit dynamite moment
Yeah.
yet. And
Sony, come on.
Sorry.
no, you are right. Like, if anyone's going to do it this year, it's probably going to be Sony at this point.
Fingers crossed.
I'll,
Let's hope
I'll,
so.
I'll be honest, and
Mhm.
not for a dissenting opinion. This has probably been one of my favourite. E3s
Oh yeah.
That's really
so far,
interesting.
for exactly the opposite reasons of all the ones that you delineated.
Okay.
It's felt really honest to me. It's
Yeah,
felt
that is true.
really like nobody's trying to. I mean, yeah, Ubisoft is pulling its usual.
Fancy graphics, it'll never play like this bullshit.
Everything was amazing in the past, and
Yeah.
it's not like we ever massively messed up.
Mm.
But nonetheless, this has felt like nobody's tried to cover up an absence of originality or anything. They've just said, "Here's some fun games," and that
That's true.
That is fair.
I like that.
That's
about
what I would
this
say.
one.
Like this
That's
year,
cool. That's interesting.
we've had a good standard, I think,
Yeah.
but just not. I think that's the thing. For me, E3 is like most of the E3 shows you get are amazing thing, or at least in the past, amazing thing, kind of a bit of a low amazing
yeah.
thing, like. Whereas this time we've had a better average, I think, but it's not.
You don't come away with
It's-
those mind-blowing moments. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. That's totally fair. But it is. I find it really interesting and quite nice. I find it really positive that you've
Yeah.
seen this as a good year. That's cool.
Mm.
So I think then it remains to be seen whether this E3 can make us smile and turn you away from it. The people who will do that will be the next conference, the final conference of this year, because thanks, Nintendo,
Yeah.
Sony. So I guess join us for that. Thank you very much for listening. If you did, we really, really appreciate it. We have one more conference reaction to come. So please stay tuned for that. And if you want to make sure you don't miss it, please consider liking to this wonderful podcast of ours. Subscribe to us, like to us if you feel like it. Come and have a look at our Facebook page if you feel like it. That's totally up to you. But until the next and final parade of E3 2016, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to you. And the game's up.